مرحبا مرة ثانية. بنخسر في وقت ثمين جدا من زمن اللقاء لأنه ضيفنا لازم يغادر على الساعة 1، عنده ارتباط آخر، فاللقاء بدل ما يكون ساعة حيكون 40 دقيقة فقط. So let's make the best out of it because we already lost some time, and let's have a start. We are moving from poetry and history and to a completely different topic, yet still a very cultural topic, and contributed to the way our kids had been raised and the way they are behaving today. I'm a mother of 2 kids, and I completely relate because this is one of the shows that my kids had grown up, and I even remember the song and I can sing it. I'm not going to do that. So
do it.
Bob the Builder. I love it.
I'm very sorry.
So please allow me to welcome our guest for this morning, Mr. Curtis Joplin, a British illustrator and author, creator of numerous pictures books and book series, best known for a children's book, Frankenstein Cat, which came in 2001, and then the production designer and popular of children's television series, Bob the Builder. And he also the creator of fantasy horror series, which I have here, I think for all the kids and the teenagers, this is the new thing. It's an honor, it's a pleasure to have you with us this afternoon. I want to start with Bob the Builder first, and then we will move how you move from Bob the Builder, the handyman, to horror.
Yeah.
And then so Bob the Builder, what was the idea behind it, and what makes you come up with this handyman and with his tools?
The idea behind Bob the Builder was my mortgage, which needed paying. No, it was a job.
Okay.
Somebody else. There was another gentleman who came up with the idea for the show, but he never worked on it. I was hired to design everything you see on the show. Okay. So my job was production designer. So the characters, the world, everything that Bob interacts with. It could be a bucket, a spade, a hand grenade. If Bob needs it, I draw it, we build it, we animate it. And that was my job on Bob the Builder. That was 1997.
Yes.
I got that job. And I worked on the show for about 10 years. Yeah, it gave me security over that period. Builders, I think children around the world recognize construction workers. So it was kind of, you think of things that have gone before, like Postman Pat and Fireman Sam and Bob the Builder, the alliteration, the B and the B. Yeah. It just seemed a natural progression. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. It was basically taking something that children knew, diggers and machinery, and turning it into a preschool show that was wholesome and good for them.
Oh, great. During the same time, there was Teletubbies, which more like on linguistic, on the pronunciation and this fantasy world where these creatures are living in. There is Cloud Babies with lots of creativity, teaching the kids, and Midnight Garden with a lot of discipline of what to do and what not to do, what's allowed and what's not allowed. How do you see Bob the Builder's contribution within this series?
Bob's contribution was, it was about having a go and having can-do attitude, trying to succeed at something. The best preschool television shows for children are the ones which have some heart to them, something. There is a lot of children's programming around the world, which is basically adverts for selling toys. It's not about the heart of the story, and for us, when we made Bob, we needed to make sure that it was about teamwork. It was about children working together. The characters, they're all children basically, but teamwork gets the job done, and that was the message. You say about Teletubbies as well, and that was about linguistics. I've done another show for the BBC, which is on TV at the moment, on BBC Worldwide, called Ra Ra the Noisy Lion, which is about a little lion cub in the jingly jangly jungle. It's a very sweet show, but we have speech and language therapists working with us on the show to make sure that every episode, like you say, linguistics, we want to help children communicate. Television can never help a child to speak, no matter what diminutive Hispanic explorers on Nickelodeon will tell you. Dora the Explorer is a big liar. It doesn't work that way. TV doesn't talk back. children learn to communicate through speaking with their siblings, with their parents, and with their grandparents. So that was at the heart of Rara. We have these therapists working with us with rhythm, rhyme, repetition, and retelling. It's bootstrapped with educational elements, and the best preschool television should have an educational element to it. Television is only ever going to be the dessert option on a child's development.
Exactly.
At least in the case of these shows, we know we've got the fruit salad as opposed to the sticky toffee pudding, if you will.
True. That's very true. In Bob the Builder, it looks like a male word with just one female, Wendy, which was not doing much, I guess. Do you think, is it a little bit of a stereotyping?
Not really, because if you watch Bob the Builder carefully, you will see that Bob is actually useless. He gets all of the jobs wrong. Wendy is the one who comes in and saves the day every time.
Fixing everything?
She fixes everything for him. If he didn't have Wendy, he would be lost.
Yeah.
She pulls all the strings. He's just the puppet. So yeah, he's pretty useless without Wendy.
Okay.
If Wendy isn't there, he's lost. So Wendy is far more practical, and she is the brains behind the operation. Definitely.
With 27 countries, 27 language about the Bob.
Oh yeah, of course.
How do you feel about it?
Oh, it's great because I'm very lucky. I get to travel all over the world talking about my work in television and publishing as a storyteller and a designer. And every corner of the planet that I visit, there's a different version of Bob the Builder. But he has different names everywhere. My original design for Bob the Builder, Bob's building yard had 2 wrought iron Bs, a B and a B on the gate for Bob the Builder, but they made me take that away, the BBC. They said, no, we can't do that because this needs to go all over the world. B and B works really well in English-speaking countries for Bob the Builder. It works well in France for Bob le Bricoleur. It works really well in Germany for Bob die Baumeister. It does not work very well in Finland for Puha Pete. So the names change according to wherever you go. But yeah, he's definitely a global character.
With this globalization and the way our kids today are attached to TV, I was just telling you that my child is now 13, and I was discussing with them, what do you remember the best from your childhood? And the first thing, they start to sing Bob the Builder. What kind of responsibility you feel toward the kids? Like, when I choose the show, in each episode, these are the messages I'm trying to send responsibly to those kids. How does that make you feel? And you are a father yourself.
Yeah, I've got 4 of them at home. Yeah, of various ages. Yeah, there is a responsibility when you make children's TV. Most of the television shows that I have done have been with the BBC, so it's public service broadcasting. So we're delivering a service to the public. That's how we see it. So it has to be wholesome. It has to be good at heart. The nice thing that you say about the older generation, there are lots of girls who have moved into the construction industry as engineers and builders because of watching Bob the Builder as a child, seeing Wendy and having her as a role model. So that message does carry through. We see it years later, children who are fans of Bob the Builder moving into that industry as engineers and builders as well, working in construction and design and architecture. So yeah, there is a definite, it does carry through. But yeah, ultimately, it still has to entertain. It still has to be something that the children are going to remember and are going to love and think back of fondly. You can cross a line. If you're making a TV show and if you're obsessed with the children must learn a message, that can get in the way of telling a good story. So ultimately, it has to entertain. The minute children think that you're preaching to them, they'll turn off. They'll change channels. So you need to keep it light.
That's for sure. And last question from my side, and then I will open for the floor for the audience and to participate. The shift or the move from Bob the Builder to her, what happened? What happened in the way that inspires you?
I've always loved reading. Although I love illustration and design and art, my first love has always been reading, and that is thanks to my mother. So when I was 2 years old, I still remember visiting my local public library with my mum. And whilst my mum was off in the romance section, I was left looking at all the picture books, and I found one book, Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are, and that was the first book I fell in love with, and that got me into monsters and fantasy at age 2. And I used to go back to the library every week with my mum, and my mum used to always encourage me to have a book. So I have my mum to thank for everything that I do in my career as an illustrator and as a writer. But I always wanted to write books for older audiences. I love art, I love illustration, but telling stories For middle graders and teenagers and adults, that's always been my major love. And I've always liked stories that are scary as well. Fear is an emotion which we all want to protect our children from scary things. It's a natural kind of reaction for parents, but it's impossible because they'll encounter fear all the time. We're born into this world screaming. I wake up every morning screaming, so would you if you had children like mine at home. The good thing about a scary book is that's the best way for children to experience fear. The worst way for a child to experience fear is being chased by a group of bullies or watching scary adult-rated television shows or movies. If they read a book and they get to a scary point in the book, if it's too much for them, you just close the book. If it's really scary, throw it in the chest freezer in the garage. You're in no danger when you read a scary story. It's a vicarious thrill. You're in no peril whatsoever. So I'm a huge advocate of writing scary stories because it means children can talk about their experiences, they can talk about their emotions with their parents, with their siblings, teachers, librarians, and classmates as well. So yeah, for me, that's the natural progression. I like to tell a story that's going to make them scared, but in a safe way. They're not going to get hurt by reading a book.
I have to give the floor to the audience.
Sure. Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours. We take our questions.
What advice would I give to a young author or a young illustrator? For an author, 3 words of advice would be read, read, and read. Because the more you read, the more informed you are as a writer. The two things go hand in hand. A lot of my friends who are writers find very little time to read in their lives, and really we should. We need to know we're always growing as writers. Obviously you need to find time to write as well, and you need to be disciplined and find time each day to write. It could just be a few hundred words, it could be 1,000 words, it could be a page of a Word document, but if you get in the rhythm of writing each day, that discipline, it gets easier. And when you're a young writer, or even an older writer, I'm sure some of you guys in the room want to be writers as well. At first, it can seem like a real challenge. It's like cycling uphill, up a steep hill on a bicycle. But at some point, that hill is going to level out. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And before you know it, you're coming downhill the other side. You're freewheeling. The story is writing itself, and you're just a passenger. That's how it feels when you've got your rhythm and you're in the mood with your writing as well. The same with illustration. If children want to be illustrators or animators when they grow up, get a sketchbook, get drawing, get in the habit of drawing people, friends, family members. Keep a note of your ideas in a journal. It's the same path as for a writer, Paul, to be honest. You just got to keep the habit, keep the discipline, and do it every day.
Good morning, Bob the Builder.
I look like him.
I'm a grandmother. I have few grandchildren. My fight with my daughter who lives in Abu Dhabi, that when the children come to my house, right away I put channel Majid, which is very popular, and it's Emirati, beautiful Emirati channel. And of course they prefer English because this is the talking language here. And my daughter will blame me that I give them more time watching TV, especially if she's not there with them, because sometimes I pick them from school. As a father yourself, is there any limit that you give your children to watch TV, please?
Absolutely. They'll maybe get an hour after they come in from school, and that's usually after they've done their homework as well. There's time to, it's work hard, play hard. That's the message we have in our home. So I don't tell my children they're not allowed to watch television, but as responsible parents, everything in equal measure.
Do you choose the program that they will watch?
We tend to oversee what they're watching. We need to know. We won't let them have control of the remote control. We need to, yeah, well, I think there's a lot of, certainly in the West and in the UK and America, there are many liberal parents who think their little darlings can watch whatever they wish. But there is a reason why certain shows have ratings for audiences. So we're firm believers that our children, they watch the programs that they're allowed to watch and nothing that's too old. My eldest is 18, my youngest is 8.
Yes.
So that's quite, and the 8-year-old wants to watch what the 18-year-old is watching. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, I love Bob the Builder. But from my experience, my grandchildren learn the Arabic properly from watching TV. When they come to my house, we watch the Bob the Builder and other programs, but I made it a very big point that I stay near them and repeat the word, and then always I record it, then we repeat it today and we repeat it tomorrow so that we can pick up all the words that we need. And that's how my grandchildren, because everybody speaks English here, that they are the best, I can say, between all other grandchildren in learning Arabic, and be proud that they know better than everybody our language. So television was the most important part.
It's important to the children, but as parents, we need to help out. We can't spoil our children and let them watch whatever. They need to learn as well.
But you have to be with them.
Yeah, absolutely need to be with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think watching while sitting with them makes a big difference.
The television is not a nanny. It's not there to be the children to be left with, because you don't know what's going to be the next program. You need to monitor what your children are watching as well. Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you to come to الملتقى. It's really, we are appreciate and honorary for us to be with us, and especially our children to grow up about always, and my grandchildren, they about always they follow you. But you told him now you talk only you give them only 1 hour to watch the TV. Your children.
It depends, really. If their rooms are tidy, if their homework is done, if they practice their guitars. Yeah, let's watch some television.
Also, Bill Gates, he said he give her children after 13 years they can use it, and our children spoil. They watch TV, they use internet, they use all this. What do you think the advice?
Well, my wife and I, we're very liberal about many things, but when it comes to our children, we are both very conservative. We have very strict ideas about how we're not in this world to be our children's best friends. We're not. They have their best friends. We're here as parents to parent and give our children clear parameters for what is right and wrong in life, and to keep them on a straight path. So, but I see so many friends, my friends on the school run, who are very soft with their children, who let them out and don't know what they're doing or what they're up to. That to me is crazy, because those children are the ones who don't have those fine parameters. So yeah, I'm a firm believer that a steady hand, they'll find their friends at school, and a time will come when they're 15, 16 years old, and the last thing they want to do is spend time with mum and dad. And I think those parents who don't realise that, they're going to be in for a shock when that happens.
But especially now with the new games and these things all coming, it's very dangerous.
It is very dangerous,
them?
We lose reluctant. My campaign as an author of books, girls are fearless, girls will read anything, and girls can be commended for that at any age. Boys fall out of love of reading at a younger and younger age. So my challenge is to get those boys back in love with reading and reading books. So I write books which are kind of exciting. They're page-turners, they're thrillers, they're horror, they're fantasy. Girls read my books in huge numbers. Boys, my challenge is to keep them reading, stop them from jumping onto computer games and the internet at every opportunity, but keep them falling in love with reading. And that's a real challenge because of the distraction of playing computer games.
Especially in our country, the 2016, they're announcing the law of reading. And we have every month, every March, it's the month of reading.
Yeah.
But still, we don't reach to catch our children to read. And because we have book club, and always they call us to advise people. And from your opinion, what do you think to give them to encourage our children to read?
My main encouragement, and this might shock you, it shouldn't shock you, children need to see role models, they need to see their parents reading. And boys need to see their fathers reading. And if boys don't see their fathers reading, they will not see it as being something that's cool. If they see their dad reading a book, they will read a book. If they don't see dad reading a book, they won't read books. Okay? It's great that they see their mums reading a lot of the time. When I was a kid, my dad used to always read the newspaper. He didn't read books necessarily, but he was always reading a newspaper. So I saw that, and that was a good role model for me as a child. These days, dads and mums are on the phone a lot, and they're doing this. They might be reading the news, but for all the boy or little girl knows is that dad could be actually playing Pokemon Go. You don't know. But for me, the first thing I do in the morning is I read the news, and I read it on my phone. But I also read books as well. And I think parents need to still be seen to read with your children by all means. But if you can get your husbands and your granddads to read with your children, that can only help as well, because then it becomes something positive. if children don't see people reading at home, you can preach all you want in school about getting children reading, but if they don't see it at home, it won't sink in. It needs to be bootstrapped at home as well as in schools. So that's where parents and grandparents can really help as well.
And especially now, if you know you are globalization, you are everywhere you are. What normally when you write, you put in your mind, is it in your country or you also think about another nation around you? Because different culture, different identity.
Yeah, I write stories that tend to be set in the West, so they're kind of in the UK or they're in America, but I also write the Weirworld series of novels.
And especially you are here also.
I wrote the Weirworld series of novels, which are set in a fantasy world. They kind of, it's Game of Thrones for a middle grade audience. That's basically how it was launched at San Diego Comic-Con. And that's a fantasy world, you can do whatever you want, there are no rules. There is a problem for authors writing stuff in our world, the danger of cultural appropriation. So as authors, we need to be very aware of that. If I was to write a character, an Arabic character in a story without knowing full well what the Arabic sensibilities are, that's a very dangerous path to go down. I wrote a book that was set in North America, which featured a Native American character, and Native American mythology, and my editor at Penguin in New York said, "You cannot do this." And I said, "Why?" And said, "You cannot write about a Native American, an Indian character in this story because it is such a controversial topic. You are appropriating the cultural norms. You know, only people who are Native Americans should write about Native Americans." That for me is wrong. That's gone too far the other way. But there just needs to be some sort of middle ground. The danger is if there aren't people writing characters of colour, of black, Asian or minority ethnic characters in mainstream writing, why aren't they there? Why aren't they writing those stories? And the challenge in the UK is to have that diversity and to try and bring on writers from minority groups who are telling these stories that need to be told, rather than having white people write those stories. I'm a huge advocate of that. I think that should definitely be the case.
Thank you very much. Really, thank you very much.
Any other question? We can take one last question. If not, I will take the chance.
I think in the case of the younger shows, it's much easier because it's telling a story in its purest sense. So we have all that those different countries need to do is make sure that they can translate the story. As I mentioned before, there's no road signs, there's no words on the screen on Bob the Builder. The road markings, there are no road markings either. So when we designed the show in the first place, we designed it in such a way that it could be set anywhere. It could be set anywhere around the world. So yeah, it felt like there was nothing that pinned it down to the UK or an English-speaking country. Everything's pictorial, so it's using the language of pictures in its purest sense.
Last question.
There is a major problem, as you know, all of us we know, related to violence. And what happened in the United States is really a real horror situation. And so the problem for me is not just the technical part. What all of us, we used to iPhones, iPads, computers. That is, let's say, somehow the habit. But what about the content of what the children see since the very beginning of their lives, where the parents cannot say Hollywood, for example, or the major industry, stop the violence. The big percentage of movies that are here in the United States, in Europe, everywhere, are related to violence.
Yeah.
And so how you purify, how you filter this, which is the major risk, because later on also, and I finish with this, with the guns that in United States, for example, are absolutely for everyone. Yeah. So this is something that is, the worst of the society.
Yeah, the worst of the world, the worst of society is displayed there with gun laws in the United States, and that we could be here all day talking about that. In the UK, we have a problem with knife crime, which is on the rise. It's not guns, it's knife crime in and around major cities like London. I do think that media and computer games, they have a part to play in that. But it's a bigger picture. It's a society problem. It's the fact that certainly in the UK and in America, children from disadvantaged and deprived backgrounds, they haven't got anywhere to go. The youth clubs, the support networks that used to be there have been taken away from them. And they haven't got strong role models in their lives. Again, we talk about male role models. They're missing for a lot of those children as well. And the path that they go down into gangs and stuff like that is obviously going to be a challenge. We need to win their hearts and minds when they're young, and we need to keep with them as well as they get through their teens. The younger they are, children are jumping ship from reading a story into watching older television programs and movies and playing violent computer games. They're doing it at a younger and younger age. And that, again, in part, is down, in my opinion, to that liberal parenting, the parents who don't know what their children are watching on the computer. They don't know what they're watching on their phones or what games that they're playing. And that's the thin end of the wedge. That's where that kind of the norm that is being sort of eroded. And that's where parents can really play their part, is providing that security for their child. I'm a firm believer that, yes, certification for films and TV shows, it's there for a reason. But a lot of parents seem to think it's okay for their 8-year-olds to play Call of Duty. I could do a talk this morning to the children on the main stage with Mr. Blizzard, and there were children there. If I showed a picture of The Walking Dead, a very popular TV show, there's kids in the audience, 8 years old. They know about The Walking Dead because they've been watching it. And I think, who is letting their children watch 18 certificate programming? And they're watching it on their phones, they're watching it on their computers, on YouTube, when their parents' backs are turned. So we all, as a society, we need to be aware of what our children are watching, because the problem really stems with that neglect, I think, from parents and society of what kids are up to. That's where we all have to play a part in that as well. I can write all these books with positive male role models in, but if they're not seeing it at home as well, if they're not seeing that message and that support for how they should behave, then I'm screaming into the wind, but really it's kind of pointless.
How long does it take to write?
How long does it take to write?
Yeah.
The first novel I wrote, the Werewolf book, it took about 2 years, writing in my spare time. Every night when my regular day job was done in television, designing TV shows, and my kids were in bed, I would fire up the laptop at 9 o'clock and I would write for an hour with no TV, no distractions, and I got into the rhythm of doing that. It went through 5 drafts before Penguin Random House finally picked up the book. And then since then I have 6 months to write each new novel because I'm writing to deadlines. So my world has turned upside down. Now I am a full-time writer, that is what I do. Well, when I'm not traveling around the world and getting to speak to lovely people like you guys as well. If I'm not doing that, I'm writing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chris Joplin. I think we could have discussed more and more about time, and thank you for it.